Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Fizz Free, and on this one we're touching on the huge topic of parenting. You have all three of us today, myself, Jane, as well as Ruth and Clare. Between us we've got 5 children, or girls coincidentally, between the ages of 10 and 12. We'll take a look at the way alcohol impacted our experiences of parenting, especially in the earlier years. Things like alcohol served at children's parties and soft play, the online mummy culture, and the incredibly popular misconception that you need alcohol to parent or to reward yourself for parenting. We'll look at what our children understand about alcohol now and our hopes for them for the future, as well as considering all of the multiple benefits of cutting alcohol out of parenting. The physical, for example, the psychological, the financial, and even longer term, the societal benefits of raising a generation whose parents don't drink, who have increased patience, reliability, who meet their needs consistently. All of these things that could become your greatest legacy and the biggest gift to give to your children. So with that in mind, thank you so much for listening, and let's make a start by asking Ruth about the role of alcohol in her parenting experience.
It's been a journey, if I'm honest. I think when I first had the children, I couldn't drink because obviously during pregnancy, and chose not to drink whilst breastfeeding as well. So I'd say I didn't really start picking up a wine glass until, my youngest was about 1.5 years. And because I had them so close together, I pretty much did 2.5 to 3 years without drinking, which is mad to think that I kind of got to the point I was at, which is just crazy. But it just shows the power of the drug and the addiction. So, yeah, for me in the early stages, it wasn't really a massive feature. And then I'd say it kind of became this mummy culture, especially online, where there was a lot of mummy blogs, and quite a few of them sort of promoted and made this confirmation bias that it's absolutely okay to reward yourself each evening with a glass of wine or a glass of gin. There was one blog in particular where the actual opening to her blog was a picture of a drink in her hand, and then she would go through what day she'd had and basically using alcohol as a coping mechanism. And I think you could look at that in a confirmation bias way and think, well, it's absolutely okay because all the other mums are doing it. Or, does it sort of trigger a question, well, is that okay? Is it acceptable? I don't know. How about you, Claire? What are your thoughts on this?
I think, if I'm totally honest, that my drinking actually ramped up again. Not in the first early years, but definitely, probably when she was like 2, 3, 4. You get into that routine of, you're generally home at the same time every day, ready for the tea, bath, bed routine. And then obviously when you've been with them all day, it's potty training, it's back breaking, and it's all about them, which it definitely should be. And then you finally got them to bed, and it reverts from child friendly to adult friendly time, and you deserve a glass of wine. And I think being at home for me was a real trigger. Being at home and not going out again generally meant I was drinking. So, yeah, I think it actually, unfortunately, ramped up again because, as we know, alcohol is a habit and you are more in a routine when they are smaller. So, yeah, definitely.
I do feel like now we've started this podcast, for me, it is a little bit like opening a can of worms. Like my mind is just spiralling because there's so many aspects to alcohol and parenting. Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Are you drinking because that's a personal choice that you have made because you want to unwind at the end of the day? Or is it influence from social influencers or marketing campaigns from the alcohol industry? Or is it because there's so much pressure on mums to be absolutely everything. Like, mums should work, mums should be the best mums, and, you know, to be really cool and take their kids everywhere. And I certainly sort of fell into that pressure cooker, really, and because I wanted to showcase and be the best mum I could. And I think it was kind of an unrealistic high expectation I put on myself, and I ran myself into the ground, if I'm honest. And perhaps, you know, my drinking did accelerate, particularly at the weekends, because for me that was like, right, husband's home, I can hand the kids over a little bit and relax and have a drink. What do you think, Jane? Did you ever find that there was pressure as a parent to be the best mum?
Absolutely, and I think what starts off as, you know, that fun culture, you need a drink to survive parenthood, you deserve a drink, you should reward yourself. And I was hearing this left, right and centre, both online and from family members, and you go along with that. And, you know, I've been to a kid's party at the age of 4 with an open free bar, and that was the first time I looked around and thought, oh my God, everyone's just having a drink, this is totally fine. The kids are bouncing on an inflatable bouncy castle, and I've got a wine in my hand that I haven't even had to pay for, and there's some free chips going around, and I sort of got swept up with that. And then, exactly as Claire says, as your social life generally shuts down and you're into that habitual routine, day in, day out structure, it does become incredibly normal, as it would do for anything with a chemical change in your brain happening at the same time every day, for then to start believing that and to think, I do need alcohol to survive parenting. This is my reward. I do deserve it. And to then find yourself completely wrapped up in believing what I think is probably the most popular and widely promoted misconception linked to alcohol, is that you need it to survive parenting. And I do regret that A, it exists so prevalently, and B, that I got so easily wrapped up and caught up in that. And I just think it's so common, and I really hope one day in the future we look back and think, this was nuts that people could openly prescribe it to each other and allow that addiction to creep in so insidiously.
On children's parties, after hosting a few at the local social club, after that I did start looking at soft plays and at laser tag, because I thought, there's no alcohol served. Because genuinely, like, I am very lucky, I'm in a happy marriage and we rarely argue, but when we have argued, a lot of those times have been because we've gone to a children's party at a social club, and my husband's seen that as a night out, and he's basically been going, oh no, can we just stay just one more. And in the end, quite often I've taken the kids back because it's getting on for 6 o'clock, they haven't had their tea, and I'm just like, no, I've got to go. And I've got home and I'm like, why have I just left him at a children's birthday party? Like, why has he stayed on and I've had to bring the kids home? Like, where is the logic in that? Have you two ever experienced anything like that?
I was just thinking about that soft play situation, and there's a particular caravanning holiday park in the UK, and I just think they actually have soft play in the bar areas. And I just think, like, I look at that. I mean, we've got obviously loads of soft play here around where I live, and you would never see alcohol served in those places, would you? And yet we go to holiday parks and the children's entertainment is there on the evening with the bar free flowing. Everyone's a winner. You know, everyone's got exactly what they want that they probably couldn't have, like, on a day-to-day basis, like at soft play or whatever. And it kind of does go into, like, a children's party. Yes, it's fine, it's a celebration, of course there's going to be alcohol there. And I certainly grew up with that, you know, social acceptability of alcohol being there, because it's been there since before they can remember.
So what I wanted to start looking at was some of the big benefits of reducing alcohol as a parent, and how the knock-on effects can translate to your kids. And some of these are more obvious than others, and that's why I thought we'd sort of work through them with our own examples or experiences of these. The most obvious and the most physical ones perhaps is the money that you're saving. You'd like to think that £10 on a bottle of wine here, £15 on a bottle of spirits there, you'd like to think that money, once you reduce alcohol, can then be fed back into the kids in some way, an experience, an activity, a small treat. Anyway, I always convinced myself, I would drink when the kids are in bed so they won't see me drinking very often. And I would do so much setting up activities and leaving out drinks and snacks. And I would compensate for drinking to make sure that I was still being a great parent the next day, even though I was very tired, very hard to wake in the mornings, and my mood must have been lower, and I couldn't have had the same energy and patience that I now have. I mean, these are some of the most obvious benefits of reducing alcohol on a physical level, is the better sleep, the better mood, and that little bit of extra money that you get. I mean, did you find your sleep and your mood changed when you've reduced alcohol, Claire?
I think the only thing that I can really say is the consistency level of me now is completely different. I would say in every aspect of my life, but definitely with parenting. I've just got that complete, I see everything far clearer. You kind of piece the day together, don't you? So, okay, she's got up earlier, I need to get her to bed earlier. So I'm far more aware of her, but I would say my response is far more consistent. And obviously, I've been sober 3 years, but I can see with her now that before I could probably be swayed for an easy life. Now there's no swaying. So she doesn't even, that's that continual, please, mommy, but just, and you're that in recovery mode, aren't you? That you just go, I just can't be bothered to argue, which is really bad, but I'm being really honest. Whereas now, I think I've got that much better view of, what? She deserves X, Y, and Z because she's been on good form this week, and I've just got that real kind of bird's eye view of her and that consistent level of my approach with her. Definitely.
Yeah, that has been a major thing for me, that they always get the same version of me. If they come to me at 2 a.m, if they come to me when we're out and about, if it's really late at night, I now know that they will always get one same version of me. There's never going to be a need to question, has mummy had any alcohol, or what state, how tired is mummy going to be? And I think that's been a major revelation for me, to think, I'm just on, I am permanently available, and I'm always going to be this consistent version of myself, rested and does have a steady mood and is more patient. I mean, these are qualities that I thought I had wrapped, actually, and the old drinking me will tell you I was fine, I was patient, I was calm, but I simply can't have been as patient and as rested and as enthusiastic as I find myself to be now, living an alcohol-free life.
You get through the day, don't you? In whichever way, you kind of don't think about tomorrow. There's no strategy. There's let me just get to bed tonight and I'll know I'll feel better in the morning. So it is more living in the moment and not thinking about tomorrow and how that kind of looks, really. I mean, in some ways, that consistency, so just give you an example, I think that she values what I say so much that if she disagrees with her dad, which can be quite often, he's got a very different personality to me, she will almost bring that to me to validate whether that approach is okay or not. So I think she's learned over those 3 years that I've been sober, she kind of bounces it off me to see, is that okay? Much to the dismay, as you can imagine, of my husband, because he's like, what I say should go just as much as what mommy says should go. But I think she thinks, and I'm not disputing my husband at any way, shape or form, but I think she thinks I'm fair. I think she thinks I'm firm, and I think she wants me to have the last say. And I genuinely do think that is because of this consistent approach that I've brought. to the table, really. How about you, Ruth?
Drinking with the kids in my care was a weird one for me because if I woke up hanging the next day, I think the guilt made me want to put more effort in. So I would plan a day trip, or I'd do something really crazy like fill a bath full of spaghetti and jelly just to show I was a really cool mom and I could burn the candle at both ends and still wake up and do my thing. And I did that for some time and I kind of got on with it. And I don't know if it was you, Jane, did you send me a little video and it was a little bird and it looked like he was drinking a bit of nectar. And he was skipping and happy, and then he drank a bit more nectar and he started to fly a little bit. And then he kind of plodded down to earth. And then he drank a bit more nectar and flew a bit higher and then sort of crashed down to earth and drank a bit more nectar. And instead of flying, he kind of dragged his feet a little bit. And that's how I felt with my journey with being a mom and drinking, was I stopped being able to be the best mom I could to my girls because I was tired, I was agitated, and it got to the point where as much as I tried to sort of squash that and put on my best acting, happy and energetic and not like my stomach's in bits and dying, it started to show. And I think I started to become a lazier mom, which I hated. As I've said before, my expectations on myself are really high. And I felt really guilty because, you know, there would be, I hate tablets, I hate phones and all that. I am a bit strict with that. But that started to lapse. And what I found was if the girls were on their tablets or whatever, they would come off a little bit overstimulated because that's what technology does for children. And then I would snap at them for being in a grump because I'd got them off tablets when I'd just been using it as a babysitter in the first place. And I was just like, it was this vicious, absolutely vicious circle where of a weekend I'd feel hungover. So I'd let them have more technology, but then they'd be grumpier because they'd been on technology too long. It was a horrible, horrible cycle that I couldn't see another way out of it, really. And it's quite sad to admit that.
We've mentioned before, I do think it's incredibly common. And by the way, that little cartoon, very short, like 4-minute animation that you're talking about, I think it's called Nuggets. Very powerful video. But another thing, Ruth, I know has meant a lot to you is knowing that, you know, through the night, for example, were there to be a medical emergency, I know that you take great pride now in knowing that you are entirely available, and you as well, Clare. I think I've heard you mention this before, that should anything happen in the middle of the night, should, God forbid, anybody need a trip to a hospital or to call for some help, you know that you've got that now. And I think that's a really powerful thing to have in your back pocket and to have done for yourself and for your family. You know, I mean, parenting is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and if you are switching off and you are medicating yourself before you go to bed, thinking that you're getting away with it, the fact is, though, that you are not capable, and as horrible as that might be to have to admit to our old selves or to somebody listening now who is doing this and knows deep down that, you know, between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. you're not approachable, you're not able to care for a child in the way that you know really you would want to, safely and securely. I think that's been one of the most powerful things, and I think that probably applies to a child of any age. I do think this has become one of the most powerful benefits that I can see as a parent from removing alcohol. It's just not there to distract me and stop me, and it means I can entirely help a child if I needed to. At any point of the 24-hour day clock, I can be there, and that isn't that a powerful sensation?
I remember clearly my little girl was at nursery, so she's not even 4, and she'd come home about 7 o'clock. By this time, I'd had 2 glasses of wine, and I'd just stripped her off to get into the bath, and she'd had an allergic reaction, and I couldn't go out to get her any Puritan. So I had to phone, because my husband was at work, I had to phone my mum and dad and ask them, I had to say to them, I have had too many glasses of wine to drive. So therefore, would you be able to go and get her some Puritan? I mean, when I look at that situation now, it's not funny. I don't know why, but it makes me really angry at myself for getting myself in that situation. But you know, the reality is you can't even go out and get a bottle of Calpol, can you? You know, you can't go to the supermarket on a couple of glasses of wine and get any Calpol, let alone should the worst happen and they needing to get to the hospital. And particularly now in the UK, you know, there's no ambulances that can, you know, it has to be severe, doesn't it, for there to be an ambulance ready and waiting for you. So, you know, now I am just so grateful that whatever time of the night, and I always as well, I tried desperately never to make sure that the car's running on empty, because I always remember this lady at work couldn't get somewhere that she needed to go during the night because she hadn't got any petrol. And so now I'm like overcompensated really, and I make sure that there's petrol in the car, and I make sure, but you know, I just did not do those things when I was having a drink. And you know, just to think, not being able to go out and get like a bottle of Calpol, like I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that. You know, there's certainly no judgment on those people that are listening to this and are in that situation, because you know, we've all been there.
I think it's the guilt. I mean, what you've mentioned a lot of, Clare, is sort of the physical side of being there for your child, that the ability to go out and get help. For me, I carry quite a lot of emotional guilt, because genuinely, and this is so horrible to admit, if I'd had a drink and the girls woke up in the night, my first thought was, oh God, can they just go back to sleep? I can't deal with this. And that is the most awful feeling, that there are two little people who need you, who need that support and need that love. And of course I gave it to them. Like, they'd crawl into my bed, I'd put the blanket over them and, you know, hush them and give them kisses and cuddles. But in the back of my head, all I wanted them to do was go back to their bed and go back to sleep, because I just wanted to sleep it off. Whereas now, and I feel so proud every single time I put my daughters to bed, if they've got a sniffle or a cold, they will say to me, Mum, is it okay if I wake you up if I'm not feeling well? And my response every time is, of course it is, my darling. I love you. If you need me, shout me or come and get me. And when they do, I am there 100%. I am alert. I'm awake. I'm saying the right things. They've got reassurance. I'm reiterating, you are safe. You are loved. And I'm not saying they didn't perhaps feel that before, because I've always been able to sort of hide it quite well. But they hear it. Do you know what I mean? Like, those words of reassurance mean so much to them that I can probably calm them better and quicker now and get them back to bed quicker, because straight away they know Mum's on it, she can give me Calpol, she can give me a kiss, and I feel safe going back to bed. And looking back, there'd be times, and again, this is awful that I'm going to even admit this, there'd be times I'd pretend I was asleep so my husband would get up and deal with them. Oh my God, that sounds awful.
I think it's actually important for us to be able to be quite vulnerable and admit these things, Ruth. I totally leaned on my husband. Claire, you talked about, you know, leaning on your parents to help in just that one situation, but I absolutely would think to myself, well, my husband's had less than me, so if anything happens, he's there, the kids can go to him. I've leaned on him for many, many years to take up that responsibility. Then, on the times when the kids would come and climb into bed with me when they were younger and not blooming the same height as me as they are now, when they would come and climb into bed with me, I'd say, face that way, sweetheart. So that I'd roll them away from me, so it would be like two spoons, so I wouldn't be breathing alcohol fumes into their faces, because I knew my breath stank. I knew I smelled of it. And you know, towards the end of my drinking career, I won't forget this, my youngest came in the room one morning. It was a school day, because I drank every night, and I think I particularly had quite a few large spirits the night before. And honestly, she came in to get her hair tied back or to find a hair bobble or something. She went, "Oh, it smells like the dentist's in here." And she meant because of the cleaning solution. You think of that clinical smell when you go into a dentist surgery. That's what my bedroom smelled like. And guess what? It wasn't from my husband. And I didn't say anything. I think I just went, oh yes, we must check when your next appointment is or something. I just changed the subject, but I knew, and it was like a little dagger, and I thought, I could smell it. Normally you can't smell it on yourself, but that day, even I knew the air in this room feels heavy. I feel like I stink. That same stench that I walked to and from work with trying to dodge people because I felt like it was following me around in a haze. Just that, the little things. Come and give me a cuddle, darling, but face that way. And I'd be trying to breathe in a different direction, thinking, why did I drink again last night? I mean, isn't that awful? And I'm just going to hazard a guess, ladies. Did the tooth fairy ever forget to come the next morning? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Would you necessarily have forgotten if you hadn't had drinks the night before? Highly doubt it.
And the elf on the shelf.
I was just going to say, for me, it was the flipping elf on the shelf. Oh my God, that
24 days of him.
Oh, yeah, can absolutely do one. And do you know what? And this is another really, really good point that I want to make, is even though I haven't had a drink for, I think it's 3.5 years I'm coming up to now, what I want to get across is that there are times I forget the elf and I forget the tooth fairy, but the guilt is taken away because I think when you have got alcohol in your system and you forgot because you're hungover and you're not on point and firing on all cylinders because you're hungover, I think there's more guilt on that than if you genuinely just forgot. Like, I wake up now and if I forgot the elf, I'm like, do you know what? I had a busy day yesterday. I had a lot on my mind and I was rushing around. That's okay. You've slipped up. Don't worry about it. And I'm a lot kinder to myself. And I feel like it's more acceptable now because alcohol's out of the picture. Does that make sense?
Total sense. I think I am far more comfortable saying no now than I ever have been, because there's no guilt surrounding it. Like you were saying before, Ruth, that you would, fill the bath full of jelly and do this and do that, and you've got that doubt of, am I the best mom that I can be? And the answer in that situation is I know that in our hearts you're thinking, oh God, I'm probably not. So then I'm going to make a massive deal out of everything. Now, the consistent me goes, do you know what? Like today, I've taken the 3 kids to a national trust. We did a big Easter trail that had all been organised the night before with me and my daughter. Had done it for 5 other kids that were going there. And then at the end, my daughter was like, can we go back onto there, Mummy? And can we do? And I'm like, no. We've done it, that's it now. We've had our fun and now we've got to go because we've got to get ready for this, that and the other. And before I'm thinking, just eke it out for her. She really wants to. And I've come up with all of these. Whereas now it's like, no. And that consistency means that she doesn't push it and doesn't keep going on and on and on and want it. And I have no guilt over it because they've had, it sounds awful, they've had their allotted fun.
There is an expiry time on this.
Exactly. But that clear bird's eye kind of view of everything is there, and it's like, I don't have to compensate for anything. I have got no guilt, and sometimes it's nice to just say no. Or if she's asked me to do something and go, actually, I don't want to do that, and I have done X, Y, and Z this week, so it's okay to say no.
One of my mottos, which I always come back to, is, is there a mom that wakes up in a morning and thinks, damn, I wish I'd have drank more last night? Or is there a mom that wakes up and thinks, I really wish I hadn't have drank last night, or I really wish I hadn't have had that one extra? And I think that's the kind of mantra really that I go by. Like, I don't think there's anybody who would regret not drinking more. And I think as far as your kids are concerned, you are more present. I definitely think the main thing for me when I gave up alcohol was patience. I would 100% say I had more patience with the kids. As I said, I masked a lot of the other stuff. I plucked out the energy from somewhere, I don't know where, and I powered through. I didn't feel my kids were majorly disadvantaged by the fact that I sometimes drank too much. However, I definitely think they're getting a better version of me now because I do have more patience. And there's only been a couple of times I'd say that they've noticed that I drank too much. One of the times I was reading a book to my eldest and she turned around to me and said, "Mummy, why are you slurring your words?" And it was like somebody just stabbed me in the heart. And it was as if somebody had like taken my invisible cloak down. I was like, oh my God, she can see through this. She can see I've had a drink. I was like, she's meant to be a young child who, you know, is blinkered to all this and doesn't even realise, and yet she did. And that was a real wake-up call to me. What's lovely is that they're quite clued up on it now. I've been quite careful not to push it on them because I always think people have to make their own minds up. But they're curious. They want to know why I gave up. And if I'm honest, I do give them the facts. I tell them the positives of not drinking. I do go through the negatives of what drinking does to the body because I think they will then be an informed consumer, which is powerful. It's empowering them to make that decision. What it's actually done is it's empowered them that much that they challenge other people. Well, I say other people. They challenge their dad's drinking. I mean, if you've listened to the podcast, you'll know he's not a major drinker. He's more of a social drinker or drinks of a weekend. But they do challenge him. If he's sat there having a beer on a Saturday, they'll be like, "Why are you drinking that? That's poisonous. Why are you doing that?" So not only am I more patient, I've empowered my children with knowledge so they can make their own choice when they grow up.
I love the points that we've touched on here, that it's making us more consistent, more present. We're meeting their needs. They can trust and respect the version of us that we're giving them now. And you've led us on really nicely, actually, Ruth, there to what I was going to ask or suggest next, which would be, you know, do your kids ever ask about alcohol or your sobriety? You know, what do they know about this podcast? And just before I hand that over to you, it's interesting you say that, Ruth, because likewise, my husband doesn't drink huge amounts, but at the weekend, just gone, he asked our youngest to go maybe a third or fourth can of beer across the whole afternoon from the fridge. And she looked at him, and she's ever so helpful, and she doesn't mind. She will flit to the fridge and bring it back. She knows how to use the bottle opener, which again, I don't know how I feel about that. It's a practical life skill, but should she know that yet? I don't know. But then I had her pouring wine when she was 7, so we'll just move on. But she said, "Oh, Dad's gonna get drunk," and I thought, wow, that came out of nowhere. She's clocked that he's now onto his maybe 4th bottle of beer, and it was teasing, but it was her very gently saying, "You've already had a few of those alcoholic drinks," which she obviously can see is normal and people have drinks. But she's obviously thought, isn't this the 4th time there's a trip to the fridge going on? And I thought that was really interesting, actually. So Claire, does your little one ask about alcohol or your sobriety, and what do you tell her?
I think I've tried to be quite... don't want to push all of my views onto her. I'll start with saying that. She does know that I'm sober. I've been honest with her and I said that I've drank too much for too long. I think there's been a couple of incidents. So just going back to what you guys were saying, is I think that they're so much more aware than we think that they are. I think they pick up on things far more. You know, when we were in that blinkered, hazy, you know, state of drinking, you just think, oh, they won't notice. But they do notice. If, say, my husband's had one drink, he might drive, just like an ale or something at a pub. And then we'll go to get in the car and she will say, "Mommy needs to drive, Daddy, not you." So she already knows that, and that's like, and then she's questioning, much to his dismay, she's then questioning him, well, how many, and I will be the one that says, he's only had one drink, it's okay, or I'll just drive naturally. But interestingly, we were all at a big Sainsbury's. It's a really lovely Sainsbury's. It's local to us, and it's got a big travelator and loads of glass panels and this, that, and the other. And all these glass panels had been broken. And me and my husband were coming down the escalator, and she was in front, and I was saying, oh gosh, what a shame, the Sainsbury's is really lovely, and those glass panels must have been thousands of pounds that's been broken. And she said, well, was somebody drunk when they did that, Mummy? Like, I hadn't said that to her. And I looked and I said, well, I don't know, darling, I don't know who's done it. But then I was thinking to myself, when I got in the car, she realises at her age that people make wrong decisions under the influence of alcohol at that age. Like, that blew me away a little bit.
Do you know what? Watching one of these cop programs on TV, I was watching it with the girls, and we ended up learning what the legal alcohol level limit is, 35, that you can blow on the breathalyzer, so that when they were then blowing the next people on this TV program, we had a gauge of what that number should be above or should be below. I mean, it should be 0 as far as I'm concerned in the UK anyway, but they were totally getting that, and they were seeing footage of police making arrests on a Saturday night saying, oh, is that how people behave when they've had too much alcohol on a night out? And I was like, sadly, yes. And like you said, don't you think, though, the examples we've just given, the three of us, just shows how powerfully aware, like little sponges they are, that they see we've made changes, and we clearly speak about this to different extents and degrees within our own families. But they're seeing it, they're getting it, they're picking up. Mine now see that going alcohol-free, some people are gluten-free. Some people can't eat sugar if they're diabetic. Some people choose not to consume alcohol. Mine are starting to get that it's a lifestyle choice, and it makes a healthier, better version of you. And I've been quite shy, actually, in speaking about much of this to the kids, probably because I'm so embarrassed for them to ever find out how much I drank when they were little, because I have been very coy about how much I share. They know about the podcast, they know we're recording tonight, they don't know the topic, and I just don't want to talk about it too much to them, but it satisfies me to see these little tiny grains and tiny examples that we've just all spoken about are sort of sinking in, that they get it, and that's really powerful.
I say it's that social acceptability is going, isn't it? The world that we grew up in, I feel that I had like a big cushion around me because everybody else was doing it. It was almost like, well, I was protected from alcohol because everybody else did it. It was okay. But I think with the realities of like that TV show, and with the realities of like all that destruction at Sainsbury's and all of that, would have I ever thought, going down to Sainsbury's travelator, would I have ever thought, oh, somebody was drunk when they did that? I don't think I would have done. Is that because of my influence? I don't know, but what it means is I think all 5 of them will be more aware, like you're saying, Ruth, that, they will be a informed consumer of it. They will know the good, the bad and the ugly.
I think it's quite unique in our family as well, though, because if you think about our 5 children, just in their little short space of time that they've been on this earth, they have witnessed, obviously I'm auntie to your children's, they've witnessed me give up, then they witnessed you, Claire, give up, and your auntie to our church. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've seen you, and then Auntie Jane, and then their granddad, and they've seen people very influential in their life within a very short amount of time, actually. What's the difference between us 3? Is it about a year and a half, and all 3 of us, and plus granddad, all gave up? And they've witnessed that. And they've seen that change, which is a conscious choice, which has improved our lives mentally and physically, in our health. And I think that's so empowering that not only have they heard people talk about it, they've witnessed the benefits of taking alcohol out of your life. And it is a little bit of a snowball effect, which we've witnessed in our family. So that's a really interesting concept. And if you took that away and these children grew up as they were, with parents drinking and grandparents drinking as they were, would their opinion be slightly different now? The likelihood is, yeah, probably would. They probably wouldn't be questioning why the glass is smashed or why I'm slurring in bed and all that jazz, because it would just be normal because no one's challenged it and no one's told them it isn't normal.
Shattering the illusion, as you like to say, Ruth.
That's my favourite.
That's what it is, isn't it? We're shattering that, like that cushion that I was saying. Well, everybody else is doing it. They've done it the whole time that I've been on this planet. And we've got that and we've gone, no, that's not the case. Not everybody drinks. And we're examples of that, really.
But to play devil's advocate here, what if we're making it mysterious? What if they're thinking, I'll make up my own mind, thanks, Mum, and rebel? What are your thoughts for when they become teenagers, for when alcohol invariably becomes presented to them? We have to hope that their attitudes, that we've equipped them with enough knowledge to know. And I try to be honest with them. I say, alcohol can make you feel quite dizzy, quite giggly, can make you feel quite happy. They need to see the reasons and understand why people consume it. So I tell them those benefits. I tell them those reasons that, people...
There are no benefits.
I didn't mean benefits. I try to explain why do people drink, because it makes them feel quite dizzy and funny for a short while. But then I always say, but it's very addictive and people can end up having too much and then they can't drive properly and they say silly things and it's very harmful. But I don't know if I'm getting that right definition to them at this point. I would hope, when their time comes, when invariably it's presented to them, and let's hope it continues to become popularised. But how do we know? We don't know if they're just going to turn around and say, I'm going to get absolutely sloshed. I don't know how I'll feel, if our kids do end up drinking as heavy as we've ever had alcohol in the past. Invariably it's likely to happen, but you just got to hope, haven't you, that we are equipping them with the decisions, as you say, Ruth, as an informed consumer, to just think, nah. And in fact, I think younger people these days are drinking less.
Totally what I was going to say. I think that now pubs are shutting at a rate of knots, aren't they? And now you very rarely go into a pub that is just drinking, isn't it? You generally go into a restaurant/pub. But I honestly think that the pub culture, they all go to the gym now, don't I work and some of my clients are younger, and I don't get that vibe from them that they go to the pub. It's like they go to Nando's or they go to the cinema or they go bowling or, that's the kind of if they're going on dates, if they're going on somewhere with their mates, it seems like they tend to have soft drinks more so. It's like, I'll meet you at the gym. Gym culture is the new pub. Really. And I think as well, just touching on that, because health seems to be more at the forefront of their mind, both for young girls and young men, it's like if they go out and get sloshed on a Friday and Saturday night, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen, I've gone into Birmingham on a night out and I see it. Actually, day drinking seems to be more of the thing at the weekends, I feel. But, I think there's very much this, going out for a meal, going out to the cinema, and going to the gym and that health benefit and, going out and then putting X, Y, and Z in your body when you've been eating clean, as they call it, for the week, doesn't seem like the thing to do anymore.
Two quick things. I'd say one, there's a chance that the drug of choice has changed. I think, perhaps alcohol's fallen out of favour, but it doesn't mean that other drugs are not being consumed. There's a whole other market. But I think secondly, to point out They've got mobile phones. It is not cool to be captured and have evidence of you out of control. We didn't have that growing up. You could be drunk and there was no evidence of it, really. I think that's a big component in this as well. Ruth, what do you think?
I'm really conflicted with this because I don't want to say to my girls, you cannot drink, because I very much think it has to be their own choice. It has to be their own decision. Would I be really disappointed and concerned if they did drink quite a lot at weekends and parties? Yes, because from my experience, I know what that can lead to, and I know too much about the health problems that alcohol brings with it. So I don't want to tell them you can't, because I think it becomes this shiny thing where, you know, it's that, oh, we can't do it, but should we try it anyway? I think they probably will try it, and this sounds awful, but I'm hoping that they feel that rubbish after drinking, that they're like, oh, I'm never touching that stuff again. However, it was drummed into me as a child to just say no. There was that whole police campaign against any drugs like heroin and ecstasy. Just say no. 3 simple words. Hand on heart, I've never tried a single drug other than alcohol in my life. And my mum smoked, which technically, you know, a lot of people, statistically, you're more likely to smoke if your parents smoked. I absolutely hated it. I've never tried a cigarette, and obviously that's been cemented as I've grown up, because there was a huge change in the knowledge of nicotine and cigarettes. So I'm just hoping that alcohol is following in those footsteps where we can move forward, and just like with cigarettes, where they put images of lungs which have been affected by cancer, could they put images of breast cancer or bowel cancer on a bottle of wine to say, if you drink this, you are putting yourself at risk? And it, you know, I do worry about the girls. No, I don't want them to drink. Would I stop them? No, I can't. They're going to be adults who make their own mind up. Will I struggle to sit in a room watching them get drunk? Absolutely. Am I going to have to bite my tongue? Absolutely. I'm going to find it very, very challenging. I'm not going to lie.
Claire, you shared a link in a group we have recently that said more than 70,000 children in England have a parent struggling with alcohol, and that was on the NSPCC website, and that's a huge number, and that's really, really powerful, isn't it? And you really hope that this is the tide of change, and that we are able to try and model just different strategies and different things for the future, and that the message continues to spread to bring that 70,000 number down as we try to help them navigate that world going forwards where alcohol is in it. And the question I have for you both is, would getting sober earlier have made any difference to your parenting, for example? And just before I ask you that outright, it's because I've seen online a few people saying, you know, I got sober when my kids were 14, 16. I wish I had done it earlier. And so I read that and I think, I'm winning. I got sober when mine were like 9 and 10. Yes, I'm so pleased I got. And then I think, well, hang on. I kind of wish I'd done this when they were 2 and 3, or maybe never at all. But it's hard to say, because we need to be kind to old drinking us. We can't go and villainise too much how we coped in, let's face it, the hardest, the most stressful, the most tiring job in the world with no handbook. So we did what we thought was right and okay and acceptable and our best. But I do sort of think, I do wish I'd managed it a little bit earlier, but I have to take happiness and credit that I've managed it at this stage going into the teenage years, which are going to bring their own challenges. But I mean, Ruth, what do you think? Getting sober earlier, do you think that would have made a big difference to your parenting, or negligible, or you just don't know?
I think you'll be shocked at my response to this, but I'm glad I didn't do it earlier.
Really?
Yeah,
Right.
and the reason for that is because they understand the change and they will remember the change. If I'd have done it when they were 2 or 3, they wouldn't have seen that transition. They wouldn't have seen the change in me, the change in the family dynamic, and they wouldn't understand why I've done it, because that would have just been their norm. So I genuinely believe that I did it at the right time, where it was kind of subtly done, but I've been more of a role model to them to show them that you can take negative things out of your life to make it a more positive experience. And do you know what was really highlighted to me? I think I was about 2 years sober. I remember talking to a young person about not drinking, and they turned round to me and looked at me with such pity. And bearing in mind, this was a 14-year-old child. They looked at me with such pity and went, "Oh, you live a sad little life, don't you?" And
Wow.
yeah, and my stomach churned. I
Oh, God.
really wanted to like absolutely bite their head off, and I had to, in that split second, remind myself, this is not the child speaking. This is what they have seen. This is what they have absorbed growing up. And I just looked at them and I just said, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I don't need to have a drink to make my life better. I'm actually better off without it. And you could see that they were so sort of, they so bought into alcohol brings joy and makes you laugh and makes you relax, that, you know, it was really difficult to witness, actually.
Gosh, that's quite, I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, really powerful.
It is powerful, and that could have been our children, like in 6
Yeah,
years time.
yeah,
They could have been saying that to
yeah.
somebody else, because they've witnessed that, you know, mummy gets all giggly when she's had a drink. But we've changed that at probably a good time in their life, because they have seen that actually, well, mummy's taken that out of her life because that's a negative thing, and she's made it better.
Yeah, wow. And that's what you've got to hope, is that we are modelling coping strategies. I think this, when I sit with my eldest and we talk about mental health and, you know, things that make us feel better, if she's feeling overwhelmed with school and friendship groups, and we try and get into nature, and we think maybe we could do a little bit of exercise, perhaps we could do a bit of baking later. Why don't you simply go and read a book for a while? You know, and I try and model these things and show that there's ways of making yourself feel better, you're in control of, that doesn't involve using any kind of a substance. And wouldn't it be lovely to go into your teen years knowing that you can go and ask the adult in your house for coping strategies, that they're being modelled in front of you day in and day out, and that you're being encouraged to do those to help yourself when you tackle overwhelming feelings without reaching for anything, that you're able to cope with yourself a little better. And surely, hopefully, this has to feed back into society. When our 5 children head out into the big world, it's the best we can hope is that we've tried to equip them with ways of looking after themselves, and surely that must knock on to the people they hang around with, their friends or boyfriends and work colleagues, hopefully, that it becomes a bit more normalised to be able to look at self-care in a different way. I know it's a very floaty concept, but it's something I try and tell myself. Maybe we're making a difference in our own way to society in future generations by just modelling this stuff and being consistent, being present, being accessible, and giving that to them. And that, I just keep coming back to this really quite often lately, that it feels like one of the biggest benefits of getting sober. I know there's the money saved, the better sleep, and we haven't even touched on health benefits, which I think we should just before we wrap up. But, you know, I just keep thinking, hopefully we're making the world a better place, just one child at a time, you know, each day that we model these behaviours and guide them and help them. I just hope that feeds into a future where it isn't saturated in alcohol and it is challenged and people look after themselves better. And we all have a perfect society. The end.
I think just touching on how we've approached it with them at their relevant age groups, when it does come to them being, you know, 16, 17, 18, when they probably would start thinking about drinking alcohol, I think when it comes to that time, I think I will be a little bit more open and honest with her. Just thinking about that, building them for the future. I think where now we're probably a little bit careful, and, you know, it's mentioned, and, you know, they know that we're sober and all of that. But I think when it gets to the 16, 17, 18s, I probably am going to show some realities, some real realities of, just like how you were saying, Ruth, with smoking, the hard facts of if you are under the influence of alcohol and you are in relations with, another person, if that goes too far without consent and you are under the influence of alcohol, that then might not take your feelings or your thoughts on board as much as if you didn't have a drink. I think I would be that open with her.
Yeah, because that's the reality of it.
What I probably would do differently now being sober is I probably wouldn't enable them. I wouldn't be, Claire's, she's the cool mom that if you go round to hers for a house party, she'd give you a beer or a wine or whatever. I will not be that person. I will not be enabling her. So maybe in those two examples of future me, hopefully, if I stay on the same sort of trajectory, means that I would not only do it now differently, but in the future I'll be doing it differently.
It's interesting thinking about the future, and it's just so relevant because we can make those changes now. It's never too late to reduce alcohol from your life. It's never too late, is it, to do that? I mean, and we've touched on probably the last 2 points I've got on my little list here was, removing risk. We've touched on that. You're not likely to find yourself behind the wheel when you shouldn't be, or put yourself in a risky situation. You are likely to be creating safer environments for your children, but you're looking after yourself. You're going to live longer. Quite simply, reducing alcohol out of your life means you've got a higher chance of spending a lot longer with your children. The organ damage reduces, the risks of horrible illnesses, the knowing that you're doing everything you can to watch them grow up and live as many minutes as possible with them is also really powerful. And that's the invisible, that's the unseen, that's what we know that we're doing. You can't see how healthy your organs are from the outside, but I think it's another invisible but huge benefit that we know that we're choosing to make on a daily basis for the good of our kids. And what other stronger way of loving your kids is there than to really be showing them day in and day out, I want to be here for you, I want to be part of your life,
I want to see my grandchildren.
Exactly that. As I say, every few days I keep coming back to this point that all roads seem to lead to the parenting benefits, and I just don't think I ever realised. I spent so long squashing it and telling myself I'm doing a great job, I'm doing my very best I can, I deserve it, if I want to get drunk when they're asleep, that's my choice. I've spent so long defending my drinking daily when they were very young. It's been an absolute revelation, and it continues to be a revelation to me, that it's the biggest benefit. I genuinely think it's got to be up there in my top 3 benefits of cutting alcohol out of my life. It has to be for my kids and my family. I just can't think of anything more powerful, and I really want anybody listening to take that on board and to know that that can happen. It is never too late to make those sorts of changes, regardless of the children's age, that it will just keep reaping benefit upon benefit.
When you are in those early few months, and I remember actually on one of the apps that I'm on, that I Am Sober app that I've mentioned before, and I've actually got like a little update, and it says, I want to see my grandchildren. And it's just like, that's it, isn't it? It's like, it's a huge motivator, is future self, isn't it? As you always say, Jane, going forward motion, forward motion, forward motion, and forward motion without that guilt.
For me, it's a duty of care and a responsibility to, as a parent, be the best, fittest, healthiest parent you can be. So you're not a burden for your kids and you're not making their lives harder. And I didn't want to carry on drinking and have my health affected, because I knew if anything happened that would be really difficult for my kids. Like, to the point where if I go to a theme park, I'm looking at the roller coasters thinking, are they safe? Because I need to make sure I get home to my kids. I need to be there for them and need to look after them. And obviously anything can happen and anything can strike you. But I think I would accept it better knowing that I hadn't been the cause of it. I think it would alleviate the guilt. If I, woke up tomorrow and I was diagnosed with something and I was really poorly, I think I could accept it if I knew I hadn't done that to myself.
Totally. I mean, you know, I've spoken about my mother-in-law numerous times on here, and she actually passed away from a cancer that should be found in men that are overweight and drank a lot, and she did none of those things. And I obviously saw her on her deathbed, and I suppose the only saving grace that you can think is she didn't put herself there. Do you know what I mean? That's all I thought. And it was only, so she died in the March, and it was the June that I stopped drinking, and I don't think that was coincidental.
You know, honestly, towards the end of my drinking days in the last few years, the anxiety I felt, because I knew I was putting myself in danger every night that I unscrewed the cap of gin, and every night I watched that liquid fill up far too high in the glass. I thought, I'm pickling myself here. My liver must be so damaged by now. I know that I'm putting myself in danger. What if the way I leave this earth is because I fall down the stairs because I'm drunk? What if I do that to myself and I leave these kids without a mum because I couldn't stop drinking every single night? This anxiety, I swear to God, was one of the most powerful negatives for me towards the end, because I knew my subconscious was screaming every time we poured that drink, every time we drank it. The back of my brain was going, this is no good, this is no good. And I knew that, and I knew it, and I quashed it down, and I tried to ignore it and plastered over it and did all these coping, compensatory behaviours to be a wonderful mum. But I always knew very deep down, God, I'm really putting myself at risk of a very, very silly accident, or my heart stopping, or my liver malfunctioning every night that I'm doing this to myself. I need to stop, but I don't know how. And I'll just be forever grateful that, able to reach out to self-help stuff, to podcasts, to literature, and that the tide is changing to make that accessible. And it just never is too late, is it? And every single day that you manage to do that is a positive. And I love all of these benefits, and I'm really glad that we've been able to go through them tonight, from being accessible, consistent, present, removing risk and danger, living longer, better sleep, better money, modelling coping strategies, helping improve society in the future. I mean, it all just keeps coming back to this for me, and I'm really, really grateful that we've been able to cover some of these tonight.
I think we should finish on Ruth's favourite saying, which is, we're shattering the illusion for those little people, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Fizz Free from your hosts Ruth, Jane and Claire. A reminder, we're 3 ordinary women who cut alcohol out of our lives and now feel passionately about sharing for free the multiple benefits of living a sober lifestyle. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on most streaming platforms, as well as on X. We'd love it if you give us a like, a share, a follow to spread the word, and to get in touch by email, it's fizzfree0@gmail.com. All the best for a fizz-free life. Less fizz, more free.